Welcome to Sachs Realty's Tuesday night podcast, where we talk about anything and everything real estate. Each week, we deliver expert information enabling you to make better informed decisions while keeping more money in your pocket. If you're interested in real estate, this is your show. Hey guys, thanks for tuning in on our Tuesday night podcast. We are live like we are every Tuesday night. Sachs Realty branded Tuesdays, I think, just because of our live show. And chatting up with the agents that are sharing the screen with me tonight already before the show started tells me, guys, I promise you this is going to be electrifying. It's going to be one of those amazing shows that you talk about for days, you share with your friends, and I don't know, maybe you won't show your kids, but we'll see. We're going to have some fun, though. But anyway, guys, the real estate industry's unhinged. I mean, it's crazy. It just keeps getting, just when I think it can't get any worse, it does. Just when I think that buyers can't be any more confused, distraught, remorseful, I'm going to share some stories. Our agents are going to talk about it too. We've got some crazy stories for you guys tonight. Unfortunately, they're all real. They're going to pull up one of these NAR lawsuits that was settled out. But anyway, guys, we have one of our these agents that we're sharing the screen with. They're not just any agents; they are part of Sachs Realty's preferred broker network, and these are great agents. One from Idaho here you're going to meet in a second. He's a real estate broker, also broker owner of his company. And we were already talking because he can't get fired, right? He can't be asked to leave. And I think that's one of the reasons why I started my brokerage. Because when I was with the last brokerage, they were like, Todd, you can't do that. Mm-hmm. Todd, you can't say that. Todd, we can't do that. And then finally I was like, well, screw this, man. I'm out of here. I think it was one of the only times my wife actually said, hey, why don't you start your own brokerage? After I started like a million other things, you know, in construction and built houses, tore them down, all kinds of fun stuff. Anyway, guys, without further ado, Melissa.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Tuesday night. It's hot and steamy here in Maryland tonight. We're going to be breaking out the fans here soon. I'm melting. Terrible. But it's awesome. So awesome to have you both, Josh and Neal, with us this evening. And I'm first going to introduce Neal. Neal, you are from, I'm going to pronounce it incorrectly. I'm going to say Louisville, but I know it's not. So Neal, go ahead. Tell me about who you are and what you do.
I'm Neal Cox. Thanks, Melissa. We say Louisville here, but I think it's just because we get lazy on our pronunciation. It's probably really Louisville, but we just say Louisville. And I am co-owner of our brokerage, and I will be the broker as soon as Kentucky decides to process our paperwork. We've been waiting for a long time. My partner's a builder, and we're here in Louisville, Kentucky. I've been at it for a while. I love real estate. This has been a challenging year, though, and there, a lot of issues kind of happening all at one time. But, I'm surviving, so it's all good.
Well, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being with us this evening.
Thank you.
Well, welcome to being broker.
Yeah, really.
Like broke. You're like no money, broker.
Yeah.
You make so much more money when you're a real estate agent. Josh can tell us that.
Yes. Yeah. Speaking of broker, Josh Connell from Boise, Idaho. Hello, and welcome to the show.
Hello. Thanks for having me. So yeah, I'm a real estate broker. I actually became a broker because the previous company I was at didn't like us shedding light on the truth about real estate and YouTube videos, and we were being suppressed, and so we said, you know what, we're kind of done with this. Let's just go do our own thing, where we can't be fired and we can't be told what to do other than by the real estate commission. So yeah, that's where we're at.
And they're into protecting the public. So as long as we're protecting the public with what we're coming out with and saying, right, they're a public protection agency, so I don't think they're going to, I think it's more likely that the local board will come after you.
Yeah, the local realtor board. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So
I'm going to talk about that a little bit tonight too, because I just got fined by the MLS. I'm going to tell you guys why. You're going to all be like, oh, poor Todd, he got fined. But I guess there was a good reason for it. Anyway, we're going to jump in. But tonight's podcast, guys, is brought to you by GreatCreditFast.com. If you're preparing to buy a home eventually, you want to make sure that your credit is stellar. And really, that's going to help you get the best mortgage rates. And, you know, it also helps you with credit card debt. So the link's in the show notes at GreatCreditFast.com. They are pioneers of credit repair. They actually combine human expertise with AI. So pretty cool. It's a friend of mine's company. Also, John Williams. He's a fellow YouTuber and very smart guy. And I'm really excited for him with his new company. He's helping a lot of people. Links below. Shout out to my buddy John Williams. Some of you may know him as This Is John Williams. That's his show, and he was on Sachs Realty's podcast not that long ago. And some of the best viewed videos that we have is with John. I think we've well over 500,000 views in a couple videos with the guy. So he's very smart. People love him. Check him out.
Yep.
GreatCreditFast.com. So anyway, let's dive right in, guys. Inventory's low. I'd like to hear from each one of you as to what's going on because, you know, a lot of people, you know, they're saying, you know, house prices will never crash because inventory is so low. And but I want to hear it from you guys. I want to hear what's going on in your town. You know, let's start with you, Neal, in Kentucky. And by the way, one of my favorite places to go ever, I was at a convention, and I stayed at, I think it's called the Galt House in Louisville,
right downtown.
Right?
Yep.
Big bird cage in the middle of the sucker, man. They got like a bar with fish swimming in it, you know. Not that I was sitting at the bar or anything. But
the restaurant up top that spins.
Yeah.
Sits right over the Ohio River. It's a good spot.
Yep. I met, is it Winona Judd?
Oh, that's
Yeah.
I think,
cool.
yeah, and and what was it? Her mother Naomi, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
I met them
Yep.
at that restaurant one night,
Nice.
so that was pretty cool.
Oh, that's
but anyway, tell us what's going on in Kentucky.
Well, in Louisville, our metro area is about 1.2 million. I don't think people realize we're as big as we are. I think a healthy market has 4,000 to 5,000 listings at any given time. Right now, we're a little over 1,800. And that's double from what we were a couple years ago at this time. So when we say inventory is up or has doubled from 2021, it's still frightfully low. You know, we still need 2 or 3 times more to have a healthy, balanced market.
And is most of the inventory that you have, is it new construction? What's that like?
There's everything. And what's crazy now, I've got a listing right now. It's kind of a not a traditional fixer-upper, just a nice home in a classic neighborhood that needs a little TLC. And people are so used to turnkey right now. Mine is sitting. We've dropped the price. We've had some interest. We're getting close, I feel. But our days on market is higher across the board. But I've also been in multiple offer situations with buyers recently too. So it's almost like there's no rhyme or reason. It's the best turnkey move-in ready homes in good areas are still selling very quick with a lot of interest.
And what's that median price?
Our median price range is about 280, 290.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
I wish we had that.
Yeah. It's a little bit lower than the country's average price point.
How about the rents, like on that 280 price range? What
280
what can they
price
rent
range.
at?
You're going to be, if you're in a house like that, you're probably going to be 1,800 to 2,400 to rent something like that.
Okay.
You know, 3-4 bedrooms in a decent little area.
Yeah, 2,400. I mean, you're getting up. I'm surprised that. So, what's the fixer-upper priced at?
We're at 350 right now. It's in a real nice kind of classic neighborhood built back in the 50s, I believe. It's at 350. I think had we listed this 6 months ago, we would have been sold at our price in a day. But we started a little higher than that, and the comps that I ran when we went on, are different than the comps now. They really are. We went on at the worst time about a month and a half ago.
Yep. Right at summer, right at the peak of interest rates. Well,
Yep.
the peak of interest rates so far.
Yes, so far.
Wow.
Yeah.
How about you, Josh? What's going on, man? What's happening in Idaho? You know, I'm a little embarrassed, man. You know, like I have to like think about where Idaho is. You know, I'm a little geographically challenged.
I know the shape.
I had to go up
of
and
Idaho.
like over further than I thought I'd have to go to find
Yes,
the
not
state.
Iowa. A lot of people think Iowa, but no,
Yeah.
Idaho. You got to keep going west. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, so in our market, you know, our inventory is down. We're down about 1,000 right now. Active units in Ada and Cannon County, we're at like 2,400. So Ada and Cannon County is part of the greater Boise area, also known as the Treasure Valley, and we're down quite a bit from this same time last year. But our home prices are still declining. You know, and part of it is affordability. I mean, our median sales price is $540. This same time last year it was $590, and so you know we have seen a decline. A lot of it, you know, it's hard to think like that an entry level home somebody's paying $3,000, $4,000 a month for that entry level home, when you could turn around and rent it for like $1,500, you know. And I'm like, you know,
That doesn't
you
work.
Really got to think about buying a house because the equity is going away. And Idaho has had this grant program where you could buy a house for 0.5%, and it's been around for like the last, I don't know, at least 7 years. If you have good credit, you know, they give a good credit second, so you're almost 99.5% financed. And so all these people that have bought, you know, they're starting to, you know, they're upside down in their house. I mean, we've had people reach out to us being like, "What do I do? What do I do? I bought this house, I can't sell it. You know, I don't have any equity. I can't rent it out, you know." And so that's
You turn the keys back into the bank
yeah.
and move. I mean, it sounds crazy, but you're saying that inventory's tight, or you're
Yes.
seeing house prices come down?
Yeah, we're seeing both. So we're seeing inventory being tight, but also home prices coming down.
We're seeing the same thing. So I guess the big question I have is, why isn't this being covered anywhere? I mean, you guys are coming on. We're working in the industry. We're boots on the ground, right? We're out there helping people buy and sell houses, and we know that if the home, and that's the crazy thing. They say, well, homes are still selling for more than list price. But what people don't realize, besides that not being true, is that they're not pricing them the same as they were a year and a half and 2 years ago. So it's like, how do you, what's the metric for that? You know, yes, if you price a home well, you're going to get a ton of offers and you're probably going to sell it over list price. But why do you think that people are having a hard time believing that home prices are coming down?
They're still high. They have not come down in a way that makes a 7 or 8% mortgage affordable for your expectations. Normally, it's still an affordability issue, and I think people want to know, if prices come down, that means that I can get more house for my money, and it's really not the case.
Yeah. And I think in our area, you know, people are, a lot of agents are cheering like, "Oh, we've already hit the bottom. Like, you're going to miss out." So we have a lot of California transplants that are moving here, trying to escape what they're, you know, what they created down there. And so they're moving up here, and so people are like, "Oh, well, this is such a desirable area. Home prices are never going to go down." I mean, we had people, they were constantly telling us, "No way home prices are going down," but yet we have seen them go down. And I think part of that is that people are cheerleading just so that they can sell a house, because our home sales are down crazy. I mean, like 14% year to date, our home sales are down, and that was almost cut in half last year from 2022. So we have a lot of agents that are new that are like just dying to make some money. They're you know, and so how do you do that? Well, you try to convince the public that, hey, this is a great time to buy. Let's jump into it, even though it may not be financially right for the buyer. So,
You know, we're gonna probably be 2 million. We're gonna finish out probably 2 million units nationwide, less than 2 years ago. So we've had a massive decline in home sales. I think they said we're going to be somewhere around 4 million units this year. But we have some charts we're going to pull up with construction starts, because I think that, and I don't know. I mean, Neal, were you around selling houses in 2008?
I was not, but I do know that we're still reeling from the housing starts from that decade being down by, down 80% or so.
How about you, Josh? Were you an agent back then? I was not an agent, but my family was affected because a lot of the Treasure Valley market was growing because of new construction, because there's so many people moving here. And so, I've had close people lose their houses, lose their cars because real estate stopped moving.
Yeah. It's crazy because, for the last, I don't know, year and a half, I've been talking about how these trends really mimic '08. And, the first thing that people want to say is we don't have the subprime loans that we had. And actually, subprime wasn't what led the 2008 housing crash. That's a lie. The subprime has always been a much smaller percentage of mortgages than conventional loans. The amount of foreclosures was primarily in the non-subprime market. And if you guys have a video on that, you can research it yourself. You don't have to believe me. Google it. You can see the percentages during that period of time of foreclosures, and that's a good metric of how many were subprime and how many were non-subprime. But a lot of it was, and Josh, you were just talking about it, the people that have remorse that bought a house over the last several years, a lot of them want to get out already. They're like, man, they don't care that they have a great interest rate. They can't afford their payment. I mean, they're house poor. Plus, they bought these houses not asking for any repairs, and they bought a money pit. A lot of them bought a money pit. And what they don't realize, and this is another thing that people have a hard time, a house is a depreciating asset. And people want to say that's not true. Homes appreciate. The land appreciates. The house depreciates. Just don't fix it up. Just like you heard Neal talk about with his fixer-upper. Neglect that house. Don't fix anything. The only time in history, even going through 06, 07, leading up to the crash, even back then, I didn't see the contingency waivers like we saw in the last several years. I was in the business back then. So I watched it. I was building houses back then. I was renovating and flipping houses back then. I know what was happening. They were still getting home inspections, even though they were overpaying. They were negotiating on the hoods of cars, but they were still getting home inspections. They didn't have appraisal gap addendums. I don't even think I knew what that was until the last 3 years, right? I mean, it's stupid. It's crazy. Like, I'm going to pay because the sky's falling and it's only going to get worse, and I'm going to pay more than, it's worth because I want it and I need it. And now these people, they're waking up. I want to pull something up before we go any further. Let's look at these. Pull that Fred chart. And by the way, I'm so happy. Joe was out last week. We actually let people take vacations here, but I'm thinking about eliminating it. Melissa wants time off too, and it always makes it really difficult when that happens. I don't get to go away, but anyway, we're glad that Joe is back. It's going to be much better than Melissa navigating these slides. I don't even think she did. Did we even have any slides last week? Thank God we had.
No, we didn't have any. We were bare bones.
We were bare bones. We didn't have like monitors. No. I think we went dark a couple times where you could hear our voice, but we were asking our guests, we're like, man, can you see us? Like, give us a thumbs up. He's like,
it started dark. It started completely dark.
Your screen is black.
That's
anyway,
all right.
Look at this chart. And this is kind of interesting because, guys, I like to look at, I'm one of those guys that likes to have a look back in time, because I think that if we look back in time, we can see some similarities to something that's wrong or things that are broken, right? And some very smart people, leaders in history, say that, if you want to know what's going to happen in the future, just take a couple steps back, slow down, and stop, just forging forward. But look at these trend lines here. What I really want to pay attention to is these housing unit starts. It's in the thousands. But if we look at this chart, does anything since 2010 resemble any other period here? Or is it just me?
That previous increase, that slope just before.
I mean, isn't it almost like identical?
Mm-hmm.
Except when you get to April of 2020, and that was in like the fire of the pandemic, when everybody was like shut down, wiping their groceries off. I was driving around, only one on the road because we were critical workforce because people had to buy and sell houses. But look here, that's the starts that dropped down, right? Everybody else gets to go home and protect themselves. Us agents, realtors had to go out and, show houses.
Yeah. We were essential.
Yeah, we were essential, right? We had to keep this going. But look here. I mean, I just wanted to show that because I'm not going to pull any kind of metrics out of this. You guys, I'll drop this link. You can do your own research on it. But I've never seen housing trends that mimic each other. I mean, look back that goes back so far. It goes back to the 1950s, right? Up and down, up and down, up and down. You got these long, overarching upward trends. And then the huge crash. Mm-hmm. And that's so let's kind of, because, you both actually are speaking the truth, which is refreshing to hear because we don't hear it that often, right? We know agents need to make income. They want to cheerlead, but the public is sick and tired. We were just talking about this, guys, on before we went live. We said, our local boards or the industry, when I started, podcasting and talking about the housing market and how it was changing, and everybody's like, why are you doing that? Why are you telling people, that the house market is crazy and that there's all this FOMO and all the remorse that's taking place while I was living it? I was talking about real stories, deals that I was in the middle of as listing agents, watching the buyers like lose everything in a lot of cases, right? And, at some point, the public is demanding that they're tired of the bullshit, from agents that are cheerleading the market. This is not right. This is housing is so unaffordable for so many people right now that, and I had a poll question, and I want to ask, and I want to dive into that a little bit. So where are we with the poll?
Here we are.
Right. So the question was this, and this is a serious question, guys, and I'm going to ask each one of you, and I want your honest opinion. I don't think the public's going to get upset with us for sharing our honest opinions. We're not violating, anything here. We're not, talking about anything other than what we see happening. But when the question here is, when you hear somebody, I mean, your peers, forget the fact that you're in the business, but you hear a peer or that you meet, you're out at a party or whatever, and you're talking to somebody and you see like a couple or whatever, it doesn't have to be a couple, but a couple, and maybe they have kids or whatever, and then they say something like, yeah, they're landlord or they're renting. Do you kind of think about them as like, oh man, like, wow, you don't own a house by now? I mean, do you think there's a stigma amongst some people that when they hear that somebody is a renter, that they automatically think like, why? What did they do wrong? Where did they go wrong? Did they go bankrupt? Did they go divorced? What was their problem? Did they lose their job? I mean, why would they be renting? Josh?
Yeah, I mean, I think there is a stigma, but I've been trying to break that stigma. I mean, we've had probably in the last, I don't know, last couple months, I've convinced probably a dozen people to be renters in our area, that are like, hey, we're moving there. And I'm like, well, I would encourage you to rent right now, because we've had people call us and say, hey, we bought and now we lost, we're upside down in our house by like 80,000, 100,000, and we can't sell and we're stuck and we don't want to be. We actually bought where we didn't want to be now since they've been in the area. And so I think there is a stigma, but I think that stigma needs to break, because right now, in some, at least in my market, it's almost wiser to rent than it is to buy, especially with the market, doing the trends that it is.
How about you, Neal?
Yeah, I think it borders on like a class thing. Like, are you a renter or a homeowner? Are you a college grad or did you not go to college? That kind of thing. One of the wisest, wealthiest people I know dropped out of college after his first year. So it's not a wealth thing. It's some kind of stigma that is lingers out there. But the rent versus the homeowner thing is similar. But, hey, maybe I'm a travel nurse. Maybe I'm renting a nice house and making a huge salary, and I'm going to take off it next year. Who knows?
Yeah. I think some of the smartest people out there right now are renters. I mean, that have set back and, but it is true. I mean, I think that, I think the pressure on people to please in this day and age, their peers or this, I don't know, man. I don't know what it is, but I think that's what really drove a lot of these people. And I think the parents, some of them were the worst offenders of this too. It's like, a lot of parents, I mean, they want their kid to have like a 15th place trophy when, it's like, my kid has to, they went to college, they graduated, they're never going to be able to, and I'm okay with helping your kids. I'm not saying that. But I mean, out of the last couple of years, the amount of money that I've watched the parents give their kids $100,000 to overpay between what the house was actually worth. And guys, and I'm a different market than both of you. I mean, Josh, close to your prices. I mean, depending on what county you are. I mean, we're DC, man. It's the richest place in America because that's where everything gets paid, right? I mean, this is where, look, you go to Washington to be rich, I think. But, I mean, so when you look at, the real estate in Washington, D.C., and around the area, the counties that surround it, I mean, people make hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. We have a median salary of like $90,000. We're like one of the highest in the country here in Maryland. We have the government, and I'm not picking on you government employees. I'm not saying that. I'm just talking facts, right? Yeah. I mean, it's the land of the milk and honey, right? I mean, they make the laws here. We've had people from the government on our show, right? And, and they'll tell you what I'm saying is true. But we have, like, if you don't, I had a client, and they just gave up. But I had a client that wanted a 4-bedroom house. I mean, it's like, is that a hard thing to ask for? They needed a 4-bedroom house because of the amount of kids that they had, and and what they had now. They're living in a townhouse, and which they're probably going to buy. But anyway, we did a 4-county search around Baltimore. Wrapped all the way around. I mean, we're talking about millions of units. We have like 10.5 million people here in Maryland. 6 million of them work, I think. 10.5 million people here in Maryland. Okay. But we did like a 4-county search for a 4-bedroom, 3-bath home. I mean, this is not, it doesn't need to be anything fancy, whatever. Under $500,000. There was 7 listings when I first entered it into the computer. And they were not good. I mean, like, you would have to spend a lot of money if you bought that house. You would spend at least $100,000 just to, take the old wallpaper and the pink tile and green tile out of the bathrooms, like 1970s at least. And anyway, that's the kind of market that we have here. But the pressure that we're seeing on these young people, it's just crazy.
Yeah, I mean, just to give you kind of perspective, Todd, here in Boise, so you're saying our median sales price is close, maybe similar, I'm not sure, but our median household income is household income is 80,000.
So you're just under us, yeah.
But that's household, that's not individual, and so.
Oh yeah, there you go. What do these people do? What do they do? What's the industry there in Idaho?
Yeah, our industry is construction. We have people that are that work here, work in California but live here. They might transport, or we have remote workers. That's what drove a lot of the price increases here. And then, but like the local economy cannot support our housing prices, and that's one of the reasons why a lot of the buyers, our buyer demand has shrank so much. So, anyways, it's just. Yeah, I think you brought that up. It's interesting.
I just want to say, too, guys, that both our guests here, besides being, in our network, our agent network, I mean, you can see these guys are pros. Joe, I lost my screen up here. At least I have him now. He can fix it. But anyway, these guys are pros. They also have YouTube channels. I've dropped those links in the show notes, so you guys can cruise on over, after the show, or right now if you wanted to. You could check out their YouTube channels, subscribe to them. Show them some love. I mean, obviously these guys are out there. You hear them; they're preaching the gospel, trying to, serve in this industry. So all real estate agents, guys, aren't what you think, right? I mean, there are a lot that definitely serve people and help them. Very needed. Joe, I want to pull up the chart. I saw an interesting chart about there was only really. Since we've been tracking this stuff, that goes back to the 80s, we had very high interest rates back in the 1970s and 80s. We had very bad inflation. Some call it the Volcker effect. We didn't have Jay Powell back then, but we're seeing a lot of the same trend lines that happened back then. Joe, this is the, I think it was on, I don't remember what article it is, but you have it up there. There we go. I thought this was really interesting because we're talking about inventory and how inventory is extremely low, and that there are a lot of, I think Zillow came up with some kind of study. Realtor.com did the same thing, but they were polling people saying, like, what's it going to take you to sell your house? Like, well, when would you put it on the market? When would you feel good about it? And also asking buyers, like, when would you buy? When would you feel good about it? Because a lot of the buyers are just saying no right now. They're like, the house prices, even though they're coming down, they're still way too high. Interest rates, way too high. Actually, they're not way too high. I hate to break it to you, but the interest rates right now are like a running 50-year average in the sevens. I can remember when I had a 7% interest rate and was very happy about it. In fact, I bought another house and did like a bridge loan, and that was like 7.5%. And I was like, wow, this is great. But anyway, the interesting thing about this chart here, guys, is the blue line. I think it's blue. Maybe it's green. I don't know. Mm-hmm. But the where Joe's showing you here, that line is like the effective interest rate of mortgage debt right now in America. And this trends way back to the 80s when we had 18% mortgage interest rates. But if we look at this chart, there were only 2 times in this chart here over the last 40, 50 years where we had such a difference in the people that have mortgages and what they're paying versus what somebody now buying a house would be paying. Look at this. Mm-hmm. I mean, why would people leave their homes? I mean, how could you be excited? And by the way, we had a sales meeting today, and I told the agents, I'm like, the only people that I'm seeing sell their houses right now are people that are getting divorced, losing their house, can't afford their house, or probate. Yeah. Right. Unfortunately, the parents are passed away, right, and now, or whatever, and it goes into probate. So if you're an agent listening and you want to, it sounds kind of bad, but if you want to get listings, I hear attorneys are a good source for getting these listings, right? Because these buyers, there's no inventory, and the sellers are like, there's no way.
Well, I have a former office neighbor who is a divorce mediation attorney, and we've got a good relationship. He sends me folks that need to sell, and it's a handful a year. Usually this year, 0. They've been figuring it out. They've been getting mom to kick in to buy the ex-husband out. They've been doing whatever they have to do because the situation is just not favorable.
Neal, what was the loan officer? Who said that? Somebody just said that the people were divorced and they were living in the house anyway. They were getting a divorce and they figured that they would just stay at home, right?
Yep. I don't remember specifically who that was. Could have been on our show, but it was discussed, and yeah.
Maybe alcohol sales starts really going high, you know what I mean?
Well, we had, at the end of 2020, my wife and I, we bought kind of our dream home, and we had a fairly ridiculously low rate on it. Fast forward to midway July 22, my wife got laid off, and she contributes substantially to our household budget. She was out of work for 7 months. And of course, should we sell this house and downsize came up. But when we looked at the numbers, we would have had to have about a fourth of the value of a home to move the needle. You know, with the rate, we would have had half the home with the same payment. And so it would have had to be so drastic that we weren't willing to, and things have improved since then. So we're still there.
Yeah.
This article on CNBC, not that I like CNBC, but yeah, I have to check all these, I go to all the mainstream media because I have to see what crap they're shoveling, and then I have to determine whether it's something that I believe in because here's the problem. Most people read this crap. They do. And that's why they guide us like, sheep. It's like, well, I heard it on the news and this is the way it is. And one of the reasons why we're not hearing the true story about the housing market or the true story about the amount of government bailouts, and that we would have literally millions of foreclosures right now if we weren't still, bailing people out that aren't paying their mortgage payments, aren't paying their, household expenses. To the tune of trillions of dollars, right? But anyway, it's interesting. Because I don't know how they come up with this, but CNBC, it says, but there's a tipping point. Recent reports found homeowners are nearly twice as willing to sell their home if their mortgage rate is 5% or higher. Well, they can't sell their home. If you have a freaking mortgage payment or mortgage rate that's over 5%, I think like most of America that has a mortgage is under 4% right now, right? So, this is really alarming here. Woo. If you have a 5%, that's the people that are buying now in the last year. They would love to sell their house, of course. It goes on to say 71% of prospective home buyers who plan to purchase their next home with a mortgage say they would not accept a rate above 5.5%. Well, guess you're not going to be buying a house anytime soon. That is the magic mortgage rate. Magic. This is, guys, now we're talking about magic here in the real estate industry. It's magical. It says most homeowners today have mortgages with interest rates below 4%. Oh, well, there you go. I like that. That's the truth. And even below 3%. Thank you very much, Fed, Powell and company, for, I don't know why. Why the heck would we do that? At what point, after you stimulate the economy and you drop interest rates to 0, make all the banks as rich as they can be, at what point would you decide, like, oh, wow, we got a little bit of issue here in America. We got a housing crisis where no one can afford to live. And this is why millions of millennials have moved back home with mom and dad or grandparents, right? So when we ask, do we think badly about people that are renting? That's a legitimate question, because most people could afford to buy a home by the age of 25 years old, and here's the other thing. How many of these young people blame, Generation X, baby boomers, because they don't have the same opportunities that, it's funny because, like when I was in my 20s, people could afford to buy houses.
I think back when we had those rates in the high teens, the average home price was something like 3 times the average salary. And so then you hear agents now saying, oh, it's only 7%. It was 18%, several decades ago. Well, but now the average house is 6 times the average salary. So the affordability is compounded there, and it's not apples to oranges like that. That's why you do have to go back, like you said, go look at the past to get the clues about what's going on. It sounds great, but it's still just not. It doesn't suddenly mean that things are affordable.
Yeah, and we also got to keep in mind the lag effect, right? So when the Feds raised the rates back in the early 2000s, they held it for some time, and then as the lag effect came into play, that's when the housing market started to crash. And so one thing we can't, like, housing is very Todd, you know this more than me. It goes in waves, right? It's not a spike up and down. It's a wave. It's not a quick move, moving it as far as like home prices and that kind of stuff. So we haven't even seen the lag effect that's still coming. I mean, we're starting to see it with credit card and car loan delinquencies have been higher than they were pre-pandemic, and so we're seeing the effects happen. We're seeing things that are going to trickle over into the housing, and I think it's just a matter of time before more sellers get squeezed and forced to give up those low interest rates.
We're being squeezed as Americans right now more than we ever have in the history of our entire country. It was funny because I was reading up a little bit on Labor Day. Like, what the heck is this Labor Day anyway? You'd like think what Labor Day is. I don't know how many of you guys know what Labor Day is. If you were like put on a spot to say like, what is Labor Day? And it's funny because when we first migrated to the U.S. And by the way, everybody's an immigrant at some point, right? We all migrated here at some point in our, ancestry, but people were self-employed. And, it's like you had the towns and things like that. And then you had the blacksmith, and then you had the baker, and then you had the butcher. And then you had, like everybody had, their different professions, and they were self-employed. And then we had the Industrial Revolution, and where, we actually started doing manufacturing in the country. And, and then the federal, the government, basically they paid for themselves or the federal by, import taxes, or tariffs and things like that. And then all of a sudden it became, we started seeing how the northern states were building these factories and things were booming, and the South was more agriculture and things like that. And then we started getting taxed in between, right? So to sell the goods from the north to the South, there was all these tariffs and taxes and fees. And then that was the beginning of the Civil War, right? And then we had so many different other things happen, World War I, World War II, right? And a lot of government intervention at that point, right? And now, we're taxed. The federal government was basically a wealth transfer. It was really taxing the people that had money and distributing it to the people that didn't have money. This is back in pre-World War II. We're not much different from that today than we were back then. The difference is that the cost of living has just gone ridiculously through the roof. The rich have gotten so rich, right? The elite have gotten so wealthy that, they run like 95% of the money here in America is the top 5% of the people. And, just to watch what's happening is just terrible. It's just terrible. I mean, it's like, how can people, we should have roofs over our heads, which is what I want to get into is real estate investors and investing, because I've been a real estate investor. So, when you're in a, glass house, you shouldn't throw stones. But I also, was a real estate investor before all of this stuff has gotten glamorized the way it is, right? And it's like now real estate investors are like Instagram famous, like, hey, check me out my Lamborghini. I don't have a Lamborghini, right? I don't make $1.5 million and brag about it a month off of rentals, right? But what do you guys think? I mean, do you think that when we go through like what we just went through, which was a terrible time, and maybe you guys are real estate investors, I don't know, maybe you want to be, but let's just talk about it for a minute. Because as a real estate investor, I believe in like multifamily stuff, not so much single family stuff, right? The bigger things, apartment buildings, things like that. But let's talk about, what's happened as America's angry. We know they're angry at real estate agents, but they're really angry at investors. And, because they feel that, and it's true, over the last several years, over a third and over a half in some areas like in the Sun Belt and outside of Dallas, almost 50 or over 50% of the home sales, single family houses, were real estate investors. And, people were competing with this. And if they didn't have cash and they didn't have mom and dad, then they couldn't buy, right? Even though interest rates were low, house prices were running like crazy because of the amount of investors. Do you think, and we'll start with you, Neal, do you think that real estate investor is a dirty word? Do you think that it's ran its course and that people will start saying no to investors?
Well, the answer, I guess, is it depends. I have a flip going right now, but I have it in a small town in Indiana, and it's for two reasons. It's because the numbers work there, and I have some trusted folks that are helping me with boots on the ground there. I've been an agent for investors in Louisville, Kentucky that live in Massachusetts. They say we can't invest here. It's too crazy. And in Louisville, it's nearing the end. Anything on the MLS has been picked over by your wholesale type people that are, hey, I'll sell your house to this guy and take a cut, and then it's almost done there. But there's pockets that can still be done. And I look at it with mine. It was a house that you could hardly walk into because the floor was so bad. It's infested with mice and bugs, and it's a really bad house. So it's not a service to anyone to let that sit there. Who's going to buy that to live in there? So to me, I'm going to put a livable, nice house on the market in this town in Indiana for a family to live in.
I don't think I was. So and I hear what you're saying. I think what I really should have said is for rentals.
For rentals,
not flipping, but to buy it to profit.
I think that
on
depends.
A rental.
I think that depends too. Here there are investors that we're competing with, but not the same as some of the large metro areas. And we're typically not competing against these like BlackRock, Vanguard type investors that have unlimited funds.
Should they be able to buy?
I've got a libertarian bent to me, so it's hard for me to try to exclude someone from going into a consensual transaction with someone. But I don't know. It's hard that it is pricing people out.
How about this? How about this? How about if people bought all the cows and started, saying, if you want to eat meat, the price is going to go, I need to make money on this. I'm going to buy, we're going to invest in all the cows. We're going to buy up all the cattle. We're going to buy up all the cornfields. We're going to buy up that's what's happening, right? I know that, a lot of foreign investors are buying up our farmland. They're buying up their housing. They're buying up. These are things that are essential for us to keep somewhat affordable, right?
Yeah.
should they be allowed? I mean, what do you think, Josh?
Yeah, so I think I'm going to just default to the saying that I kind of lived by is pigs get fat and hogs get slaughtered, right? And so there's a lot of hogs that come in and then they're slumlords. And that's, I think that's different than somebody coming in and buying and having a decent rental and pricing it fairly, right? Not continuing to jack up the price. I mean, obviously with taxes and that kind of stuff, you do have to. So I am a real estate investor. I believe in owning real estate. Right now in our market, unless you have cash, it doesn't really cash flow unless you're putting 50% down or more because of the interest rates and all that kind of stuff. But I think if good investors are buying it and not creating slumlords, it's better than the reverse. And the other thing that I also want to just bring up is, government housing. So there's people that are building government housing for government housing, but essentially they are the landlords and you are just renting from them. And I think it's better to have a human that you can talk to that will actually cares about the property versus like the government having government housing that you don't even know who to talk to there, who's controlling that. So that's kind of my take on it. I think we don't have BlackRock, but we do have like America Homes for Rent. They're in our market. They buy up subdivisions and they rent. And those people who are building multifamily right now, their performers are off because people weren't expecting things to change, and our market rent prices are dropping, and so I think I would just go back to if a real estate investor, pigs get fat but hogs get slaughtered, and don't be a hog because
Joe, we have a chart on starts. I think housing starts. When we're talking about multifamily, especially, I think, or maybe we already did it where we had the couple thousand, but just pull it back up again. But the thing is, so look, here's my take on the investor market. And I think that we glamorized it so badly over the last decade. And one of the reasons is because it was such an opportunistic time, right? So, actually, there's another article. I think it was I don't know, maybe it was was it on Financial Times? But we were in when the housing market crash happened in 2008 and 9, 10, and 11, and when I was buying houses, I mean houses that I was buying houses for $50,000-$60,000 that were half price, 60% off. These were houses that people hadn't taken care of and they were struggling for years and they didn't fix things and mold was growing in a lot of them and things. It was just bad. And, from an investor standpoint, I think, this is when we bundled all those loans and sold them to Wall Street, back in the Obama administration. And I'm not blaming the Obama administration. I'm just saying that's happened to be the one that put these the pilot programs together to sell these, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of bundles of loans, mortgages that were defaulted because they were plaguing the neighborhoods. I mean, the grass was 1.5 feet tall. I mean, board ups were in every neighborhood. Just a disastrous situation. And, I think investors really got supersized at that point because we never really saw a point in time where there could be so much wealth generated from buying a house that somebody would live in. And I think that once that engine started going, that it was such a powerful force that it ran the muck gamut all the way up to the top to where we are right now. And I think it's going to come tumbling down like freaking, we've never seen before. Because what's happened is we've reached the breach of affordability in America. And when we start seeing people move back home and start seeing multi-generational households and sellers refusing to sell because they got the cheapest mortgage rates they could get, and they're going to have to trade in their great deal, their big house, great deal, low mortgage payment for half the size house, twice the payment. They're not going to do it. Now we've got ourselves in a problem because now we're in a situation where all these investors thought that they could continue to buy. And how many of them bought at the top over the last 4 or 5 years? You know, even if you go back 4 or 5 years, how many of these investors took every ounce of equity out of their purchase because they said that's the thing to do? You know, and I mean, you've got, you know, Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Everybody knows the book. I respect the guy, don't get me wrong. But all these people that were saying that you make your wealth in real estate by extracting every penny of asset, you know, that you have of liquid cash and buy another one and buy another one and buy another one. No one was planning for commercial real estate rates to double and probably triple here in the next year. Nobody was planning on insurance going through the roof. And if you have a loan, you need to insure the property. It's not like you could self-insure, right? Mm-hmm. So now your insurance rates are going up 40%. We all know, God knows, how much we're spending in utility costs. They're talking about green energy and penalizing landlords like they've never been penalized before. If you have fossil fuels in some of these states and some of these buildings, you are going to be forced to retrofit these buildings with electric units that are going to be so expensive to regulate. How are these landlords going to make it? How many operators were promising, or not promising because they couldn't do that, but were bragging about having double-digit returns for investors buying these multifamily properties with the lowest cap rates in the history of the United States in the rental market, expectant that they would just be able to raise rates by making improvements? At what point does somebody sit back and say, how do people pay for it? Mm-hmm. You know, are we going to see 30, 40% wage growth in the next year?
So we've got to see something, or
what we're going to see is AI taking jobs, right. and we're going to see employers saying, how the heck can I reduce my cost and get rid of people? Mm-hmm. Because they're my liability in a lot of this, right? I mean, like I got to, you know, yeah, I got to hire people.
You mentioned commercial debt, which I was looking at something yesterday or the day before that it was something like half of all the commercial paper out there comes due next year.
In the next 12 to 18 months.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so it will, when it's all serviced again, it will be at double the rate or more. And that's not the worst part. What's the worst part?
The worst part is they're going to need cash.
Yeah.
The rate's going to double. And their financials have tanked. Yeah, I mean, we're talking about office buildings. You know, a lot of these landlords, man, they are vacant. Their financials today look worse than what it did when they financed a place before the pandemic, before everybody started thinking that working from home was a great idea. What are they going to do? The bank's going to come in and be like, oh, I'm sorry, Joshua, man, you've got this building. And I know it's going to refinance, you know, you owe $5 million on it right now, but we don't think the building's worth that much because we banked on your income on the building. I mean, how are you going to pay the mortgage payment? So we're going to refi this, but your interest rate's no longer 3.75% or 4%. It's going to be 9 or 10%. But the biggest thing is, Josh, we need you to put down another $1 million because we don't want to give you the full amount that, you know, is owed right now.
Yeah, and then I run into the problem. Well, but I bought the property at a 5 cap, so I don't even have enough income to even make up that. You know, I'm negative when you jump the interest rate and all that. So, I mean, there's a big problem coming in the commercial world. I mean, even here in our market, multifamily, there's almost 20% is under construction. 20% of new of the square footage that's coming available is under construction. And so they haven't even been able to roll it into a perm, right? Right now they're under
it's going to be a glut,
construction
man.
loan, and then it's going to roll into, and our rates have continued to drop, our rent rates. So there's pain brewing, and it's just a matter of time.
And they said that rent rates are not going to go down. And when you have the Fed and you look at you talk about California and you talk about rent controls and you're talking about all this craziness that's going on, right? If you don't think that's going to spread, if you don't think that the pressure is going to be to get affordability under control and reduce rents and put downward pressure on landlords, their costs are going up. I'm telling you right now, my prediction is a lot of these investors, a lot of these landlords are in big trouble. I think they're in big trouble. And I think that you're going to see, I mean, the mom and pops, I mean, the only ones that are going to be able to sustain it, and they have fake money anyway because they're like in gambling called the stock market, right? And that's like ridiculous in itself. You've got all these people are investing in new construction. How many people, I mean, look at these stocks of these new construction home builders, man. It's going through the freaking roof. All these investors, well, they know that the new construct, but they're so idiotic, man. I mean, when you think about these bureaucrats, they have no idea what it's like to be, struggling to pay a mortgage payment. Right? But they just figure, hey, we got all these investors who are willing to put their money in. We're willing to put our money in. So when like Zillow cuts, $700 million in losses, I think it was more than that, $880 million in losses. Who pays for that?
They love it when you say Zillow. It's like they love it when you say Zillow. They're like,
yeah.
They're
I haven't even
Zillow.
gotten started tonight. You know that? I mean, that's it. Let's take some questions. Our audience is probably like chomping at the bit here, like, answer my question.
yeah, we had
What
a
we
lot of talk on real estate investors. We're just going to hit on those because that is fresh on what we were just talking about. I'm both a real estate investor and a renter at the same time. I don't feel like private investors are the problem because the risk mitigates their decisions. Problem. For example, institutional real estate investors who get government bailout if they fail.
Hey, Danny, I'm not picking on you, man. I'm not saying that, that real estate investors are the problem. What I'm saying is that, like everything else, people get caught up in the rhetoric, right? I mean, it's like, how many people lost money on Bitcoin? And I mean, you're talking about people getting wiped out. So everybody's like, oh, my buddy's buying a house. He's house hacking. He's, doing this, doing that. I got to do this. I got to do the, the Burr method, as, you hear passed around in the, the investor market. Look, everybody wants to make a living and make money and be successful. And maybe not everybody, but most people want to do better for themselves and build some kind of retirement. We know we can't rely on Social Security and Medicare. We're watching our grandparents and our parents struggle to pay their bills. We have more people over 70 with credit card debt than we ever have in the history of America, right? We have people that can't afford health care in this country. We have more 70-year-olds going back to work because they have to, not because they want to. I mean, good grief. So, I mean, when we look at all these terrible statistics in America right now, I'm not picking on real estate investors other than saying that everybody jumped into it thinking they were going to make a gazillion dollars, and you're not. And now the party is over. Look, I've been in the business since 1989. I've been a real estate investor since like 1991. I mean, I'm preaching to myself here, guys. I'm saying that it doesn't work. It doesn't make sense. You can't go to Idaho and buy a house for $500,000 and rent it for $1,500 a month. Yep. It's a little upside down.
Yeah. Yeah. And we have a lot of people, and when we're talking about the private investors, you have the DSCR loans out there. They're going for single family. And a lot of people are getting pulled into these where all it is, it's based off the income off the property. And so, they're putting 20% down. They don't have to have any income verification. All it is based off of the rents. But as rents continue to fall, then these private investors are going
screwed.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly.
Hey, one thing I didn't mention, there's a lot of countries trying to get their money out of their country and into this country. I mean, they maybe they're dealing with different kind of currency or whatever, or different kind of motivation. I don't know. Maybe we'll just have more foreign investors. I I think the number one, everybody wants to say that China is the number one investor in our real estate here in the United States, and that's not true. It's Canada. Canada's the biggest investor in, America in our real estate. Now, China's right behind them. Look, I'm not picking on Canadians and I'm not picking on the Chinese. I'm just saying that it's a broken system. If you're sitting around right now still scrolling through Instagram and you're listening to somebody that's saying, buy a rental property, you're going to make $1 bazillion, come and buy my course. That's how they're making their money right now. All right. Maybe 20 years ago they made their money doing it. Right now it's washed up. It's done. And I don't know if that it's ever coming back again. So Danny, I appreciate you. I'm not picking on you. Keep house hacking. It's a good way to do it. Look, I'm not saying that you can't invest in real estate, but it's not going to be the way that it's been the last 10 to 15 years. I promise.
I do want to ask this one too, though. It's more of a statement, but I want to get your guys' thoughts on this one. Anyone who buys a home that they don't live in as the primary residence should pay big penalties and taxes. That would deter people from sitting on houses they don't need. Josh, what do you think about that?
Well, so in Idaho, we have a tax break. If you own the house, it's your primary residence, you get a property tax break, where if it's a rental, you're paying taxes as it goes. As far as paying big penalties and stuff, right now that's how the loans are written. If you get an investment loan, you're paying a higher interest rate. You're paying, you're paying more just to get it. Unfortunately, that doesn't go to the people. That goes to the lender. And so, I don't know. I differ a little bit on this one because I don't think they should be penalized for having investment property. Again, I think humans, American people, should have rental real estate, but yeah, they have to pay. I mean, they got to pay for the repairs and all that kind of stuff. So,
a lot of people don't realize that an investor, when they buy a non-owner occupied house, that is a commercial loan. You can do an investor product through Freddie Mac. You can have up to 40 units or 40 doors per investor. With a program that they have, you have to buy it in your personal name and then somehow transfer it to an LLC later, which costs money. Depending on which state you're in, it's more advantageous than others. But what happens is you're not going to find 10 fourplexes probably to take advantage of the program. Shy of that, you are lying and committing bank fraud if you are buying a house saying that you're going to live in it as a primary resident and you don't. Stop paying your mortgage payment, and these banks might just get upset enough to start prosecuting people that are being frauds by having a 30-year fixed rate mortgage as a primary resident, and it's not their primary resident. Now, I don't know I'm not saying that people are doing this stuff intentionally, but if you look at banking laws are very crystal clear. And I think people, when they don't realize that when they're filling out applications and stuff like that, that's a serious charge, right? Yeah. But the thing is, what you have to understand here is you always have the people that bought the townhouse or the condo or whatever, and then they get married and then they move in, they buy a house and then they rent that house. I'm not talking about that, right? I'm not talking about that. But when we start getting into, well, I just bought my 6th house and I don't know how I'm like, dude, how did you do it? You're banking with M&T. You got a residential loan. This is the 6th freaking house that I've sold you. How do you do that? Well, I know my loan officer or whatever. I'm thinking to myself, it doesn't make sense to me. You got a 30-year fixed mortgage on your 6th house. It's a residential. Like, come on, man. They're called commercial loans. They balloon in 5 and 10 years. If you can get a 10-year balloon now, which is unlikely, most of these commercial loans are 5 years. You buy it as an investor. You get a commercial loan because it's non-owner occupied. You build a relationship with the bank so that you can do it again and again and again. You pay them on time. Use the same loan officer, right? And then what happens is what Josh is saying, these notes are coming due. So back 5 years ago, a lot of these notes, and even 10 years ago, these loans were very affordable. Or 10 years ago, they got the note and they refied it 5 years later. So these investors have 4% 3.75% commercial loans. Party's over.
Yeah.
Party's
Well,
over.
And federally, when you sell your primary residence, you're not paying those federal capital gains taxes, and they're hefty on some of these investment properties when you sell.
Yeah, you got to, and because you know what? And you brought up a great point, because you have a depreciation recapture. And a lot of people don't realize that. So I say to my, some of my buddies that, have these multiple houses, and I'm like, so then I say to them, like, how do you do it on your tax return? They're like, oh yeah, I do it all legit, man. I do it above board. I'm like, do you claim depreciation on the structure? And they're like, well, I mean, I don't do that in, whatever online, TurboTax,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, guess what? When you sell that non-owner occupied house, just like Neal said, you're getting a recapture whether you took it or not, right? You're going to have a big tax burden on any kind of gain, and then get a recapture on however long you've owned it, whether you took the depreciation. You guys, we're talking probably over a lot of people right now, their heads, but let's answer more questions. But
Here is a.
you can just
another one.
believe us. It's a real crap show going on right now, ladies and gentlemen. Brought to you by who? The Fed?
Sure.
Brought to you by our
The MLS.
Fed.
Okay, so how about this one? If an engineer gives a good foundation report, but the foundation is bad a month later, how is the buyer that bought after that report protected?
That's a sticky.
Yeah.
Neal, I'm going to have you take a stab
How's the
at that.
foundation? Did they have like a earthquake
Yeah.
or something?
I know. I'd probably need some more details there because
Maybe the agent knew the engineer.
possibly because
Paid
I
him
mean
well,
I don't know of a foundation being great one month and then not the next. That falls a lot on sellers in your disclosures, and I tell my sellers, they're like, well, should I put this? Yeah, the answer is always yes, because it's your get out of court free card too. Because if you are letting people know there are problems, you can't come back on them on those problems. So I'd wonder a little bit more about the situation. It's hard to come back on an inspector. That inspector is licensed, and their opinion is a professional opinion too.
Oh, but an engineer, man. That's not
Yeah.
your typical inspector. I mean,
That's
if
true.
it's a
That's
structural
true.
engineer, I mean, they gave a certification. I think there would be some recourse.
Yeah.
On the
especially
engineer?
towards to the engineer.
Yeah, with an engineer for sure. I've got a situation that mirrors that's been going on for months and months, where a seller didn't disclose some foundation stuff, and he's going to be paying a lot for it.
I had share this little story. I did a renovation on a house, and I hired a structural engineer when I was, it was a bank-owned property, and I hired a structural engineer, and it was a beautiful lot. And so I'm like, man, I need you to check this thing out. It looks pretty bad. And the structural engineer came out and he goes, oh my gosh, man. He said, don't buy this thing. I'm like, why? He's like, this thing's terrible, man. It's like, it is a disaster, like it's a structural disaster. It needs to be torn down. I was like, okay. Got the report. I think I bought the property for like $35,000 because I was like, man, I got to tear this house down and build a new house. So I went out there with my partner at the time, and we were like really looking at it, and we're like, somebody built a wood house around a block house. And the basement was kind of like, paneled and this and that and everything. And I'm like, we ripped everything down, and the house was the most structurally sound house. And I had another engineer that came out, and they're like, oh, this house is great. This foundation is beautiful. In fact, it was funny because we pulled the side of the house, the wood part, off with our truck. We just backed up and like put a hook on it and pulled it down. And the house was perfectly fine. Anyway, it just reminded me of that. Structural
I love
engineer.
that.
What did he know? He saved me like a lot of money though, probably like 50 grand.
Yeah.
But by saying it was bad and it really wasn't. But anyway, yeah, I think the structural engineer would be on the hook.
Yep, I agree.
The way this is, I have to wonder if that's a real problem that Jason's going through. So I hope that they get it figured out.
Yep. How about this question coming in? Hi, Todd. Do you see home builders reducing home prices to try to attract more buyers?
You know, I unfortunately see around here home builders raising their prices. And I mean, if you just go on the MLS, I mean, I don't know what it's like. I hear, from our fellow agents that are down in Dallas and, the suburbs around there in the Sunbelt states. And they say that the builders are giving incentives. The problem is this, and I used to build houses, so I can tell you the problem is that builders typically have houses under construction, right? They're under contract, and they have a community of buyers that bought at a certain price. So what happens is when they start reducing those prices, they really upset a lot of people, right? I mean, they upset the apple cart big time, and it's affecting their comps. So when they drop in that subdivision, those prices, so what they try and do is they try and give incentives. They'll buy down the mortgage payments. That's what we see that's happening. They'll, buy their interest rate down to 4.5% or 5% to get the price of the home. They'll add things that, like a free basement in there. So they'll incentivize the buyers versus really affecting the comps in a negative way by dropping prices. And by the way, the apartment business does the same exact thing. So when you have a multifamily building, an apartment complex, rather than reduce the price of rent, they would rather give you a 15-month lease, give you 3 months free to sign a 15-month lease. So essentially, they didn't change their lease amount.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
I can answer that. Here in our area, home builders are giving away closing costs, or like Toll Brothers is in our market, and they're offering, hey, you buy one of our houses, we'll give you a 5% interest rate. And so that's how Toll Brothers and a lot of the builders are moving inventory, saying, hey, kind of the same thing. We can't cut the prices because it's going to mess up the comps and upset the neighbors, but some are forced to cut prices and give those incentives at the same time.
You mentioned Toll Brothers. Are they still building nice houses where you are? I mean, here locally, it's probably one of the better builders.
Yeah, I would say they're in between. So they're in the move up, but not the nice move up. They're nice, kind of right.
But as far as quality,
quality, I'd say they're right above entry level.
Gotcha.
But you can pay. You can have them build $1 million house if you want. So.
How about you, Neal? Are you seeing builders drop prices?
Same. They're kind of giving away the farm to not have to drop prices. We actually, I've got a listing it's about an hour away from here right now. It's a client that I've done several deals with. They lived in their new construction house for a couple weeks and then had a job transfer. And so here I am listing his house next to all these almost completed ones in the same neighborhood. And, I was hoping that they wouldn't lower their prices because we were in competition with these guys. Got it under contract pretty quick. And what the selling point was that our contract was so much more easier to navigate than the new construction contract.
How long were they in the house?
Literally a few weeks.
They were only in the house a few weeks and sold it?
Yeah. Ooh. They not only did his job situation change, but they realized that they didn't like the house also. So they said, easy decision. So
here's the problem with new construction is that you get a year walkthrough. And what happens is, man, when you start going through the seasonality, right? It gets hot and then it gets cold and then, the weather changes. You get nail pops everywhere. Caulk separate, molding separates. you start seeing a lot of the problem. You notice that the carpet that they sold you was junk and it wears differently, or you now start to see the seams popping up. And the problem is for these folks that bought that house, that they only lived in a couple. I was going to say, the benefit of buying a house that went through the year inspection and went through the repainting and the re-point up and the nice thing is you don't have to deal with that builder anymore, right? You hope that now the house doesn't have to have work done to it for, a good while, maybe 7, 8, 10 years, right? But what I see these people go through with the junk that's being built right now, across the board, the building materials, the speed that they put it up, the lack of craftsmanship, because everything's production and price. And, hey, when I was a contractor, there was a company around here that I worked for called NV Homes. They're still out, by the way. But years ago, they were financially insolvent. And I actually got a letter. They owed me a whole lot of money. I was a young guy. And, we were one of their contractors. And, man, I got like 10 cents on the dollar. But builders, especially these big national builders, they're just hammering on you, for cheaper. And, I mean, it's, how do you do it? You see these guys out working on the weekends because there's no OSHA. Right? There's no, DLLR coming out to the job site with their helmet cams. I mean, when I got out of the business, the DLLR was showing up to job sites, recording employees, right? Trying to find out, like, are you really an employee or are you an independent contractor that's being treated as an employee? Right? Because they're like, do you get taxes taken out of your pay or whatever? So a lot of these people are like, man, I want to work on the weekend where I don't have to worry about any of these government entities. I'm working 7 days a week. I'm not saying that that's why they do it, but I mean, I'm not stupid, right? I mean, I lived in this industry for a very long time, right? But the problem is it's go. And what do you do when you're in the middle of a job and your crew doesn't show up? Right? I mean, you got to get the job done, right? So you're bringing in people that aren't qualified to do it, or they left you because they could go make $2 an hour more for the next guy and they just didn't show up. But these builders, I mean, some of the quality that I see is crazy. Anyway, what else we got? I'm glad to be out of that business. I look, I mean, it's, everybody likes to think that they run their gamut and do what it is that they do, but I'm very happy talking to you all right now on YouTube and teaching and educating and working on some online courses right now to further, help buyers and sellers navigate their purchases. And the market's going to change, guys. You both realize that, don't you?
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's changing already.
Agencies changing, right? I mean, everything's changing. We're archaic. I remember when I got into this business and I started doing video and people were like, what? I go, video? Like, yeah, I'm sorry, but you don't look the same as you do on your business card, right? I'm a little shocked that you still have a high school picture on your business card. I'm like looking at their business card going, is that you? Right? I mean, it's like, look, I hate to tell you, and then I'm having like meetings with agents and they're like, yeah, well, I don't do text messaging. I'm like, well, why not? I'm like, because I pick up the phone, and if they don't want to pick up the phone, I'm not going to deal with them. I'm like, okay. We are so archaic in this industry. I'm glad to see that we got new blood that's, you guys are doing it. You weren't part of the '08 crisis. You weren't contaminated. You actually believe in integrity and honesty, and you're out there preaching things in a good sense. There is hope, but it's going to change. I'm telling you, it's going to change. Yeah. If the agents think that they're going to be able to go out and make money like they did before, it's over.
Nope.
It's over.
Yep. Think again. Okay, why does Zillow
Forever.
Yeah.
Forever. What TD Ameritrade and like, well, what was it? What Chuck can do for you, right? I mean, remember, I had a good buddy of mine from high school. He was a financial advisor. And I guess there's still those financial advisors out there. Of course there are. Right, that handle big wealth, right? But how many people just do their own trades online? I mean, for $10 a trade, or they get a special $2 a trade, or free trades for the next whatever.
Yeah,
It's going to be free real estate. It's gonna,
Charlton is like answer.
what are you? You're a real estate agent?
Zillow
Really?
question.
Wow. What do you do?
Okay.
Of course, what we do now that everybody only thinks that we open up doors. Well, I went to school. I became a psychologist. I'm now a lawyer. I'm now a doctor. I have to stitch myself up.
That's right.
I'm a masseuse. I'm so tired when I go home at night. I need to take care of myself. I've learned so many things. I used to just write contracts, man. Be like, cool. Hey, we haven't even talked about that. Oh, how bad do you want the house? Oh, well, you're going to have to offer more than that. You're going to have to offer. Oh, no, you can't ask for that. You can't get a home inspection. No. How much money are you willing to give them over the price? I'm doing you such a great service, by the way. I just want you all to know. And then a lot of these agents sit there and say, well, they can't do this without us. What? We got to wake up, guys. We got to wake up. I mean, there's a rude awakening happening in the housing market, and you're hearing it here first if you're in denial.
Zillow question.
Another question.
Pertaining to
I
Zillow.
see your name in this.
Why does, well, yes, because I read them. Why does Zillow not display tax or price history on main listings? Other state histories are shown normally.
Every state's different. I think every state, their tax records produce more information. I think here in Maryland, we have a hard time of even having the data entered correctly.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, wow, like that's right. It actually has a square footage rate. It has the number of bedrooms right. I mean, it's very common here, especially in Baltimore, for the tax record to be wrong. In fact, I had a multifamily house. You know
I
this.
remember.
I was like, no. I had a multifamily house, and I'm like, I'm just trying to get it to say the right thing because I want to sell it, right? So it had it listed as a 1 unit. And so I tell people all the time, I'm like, look, there are a lot of illegal, but there are a lot of illegal multi-unit houses in Baltimore. And these investors want to get them, and they're like, yeah, but it says it's a 5 unit. And I'm like, well, they never really got permission for it, so it's illegal. Oh, but I'll buy it anyway because I want to have a 5 unit. And it's like, okay, well, when they show up to tell you that you have to vacate the building and they start finding you every single day because the neighbors complain, you're going to find out the hard way. But in this case, I had this house that I bought, and I was so proud because I took it through the zoning. I got it approved for a 2-unit building, but they never changed the tax record. And I was like, I'm looking at it, and I got 4 of these in a row. And I'm like, this sucks, man, because I want it to be right when I go to sell these, and which I did, by the way. Thank goodness I got rid of them. But we called down. You called down.
I did.
And they're like, well, we can reassess it.
Yeah.
And we can send out the tax assessor to come and reassess it if you want to fix it. I'm like, no. It'd
They
be
always
wrong.
like to be difficult down there.
It'd be wrong. We'll take the tax break. The new buyers will like it. They'll like the tax break. It was legal.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
That Zillow.
Why
Yeah,
does
well,
Zillow do anything?
Did you want to segue into something there?
And Zillow.
Were you segueing into what you wanted to talk about next?
I can segue how I'm really pissed off right now about my $250
Here we go.
fine.
Here we go.
Should
I
I
knew it
talk
was
about
coming.
that?
Go ahead. Have at it.
This is a perfect segue into this.
Well, yeah. Here we go.
You guys know I do videos and stuff, right? I mean, I'm a YouTuber. We do camera stuff. Well, I don't do a lot of production. You know, I give the leads to my agents, but every now and then I do take the listings and I do videos on the listings. And I got this fine of $250. They said that I had a branded video on the MLS. Now, you can have tours, the 3D tours, video tours, whatever. The problem is that when your brokerage has the listing, and by the way, they're freaking our listings, right? I mean, if the client, I'm a broker, the listing agreement with the seller is with me, right? Not my agent, not the MLS. Well, the MLS says that I can't have any branding in my online stuff in the MLS, right? I can't have my sign and a photo in the front yard. I have to void it out. I can't have a video that says, hey, I'm Todd Sachs. I'm a listing agent for this, because they'll fine you. Well, one agent reported me. Go figure. They were just sorry because I had the listing and they weren't. Whoever you are, if you're listening, thanks a lot. $250 fine, right? But here's the thing. Why? Who are you as the MLS to tell me I can't brand the listing that I am on the hook for? I'm liable. I pay insurance to have E&O insurance. I've got to defend myself if there's issues with it. God knows, you're on the hook, right? Mm-hmm. But why is it that Zillow, the MLS says, well, my listing broker Todd can't put his name on the MLS, but when you publish his listing, you have to list him as the listing company. He's got to be on the MLS, on your, public MLS. Makes no sense. Anyway, yeah. Thinking about calling my lawyer tomorrow and seeing how much fun we can have with this one.
Yeah, and Todd, what's even greater about that is MLS charges us fees, right? But then they turn around and sell all of our information to
Pay
Zillow,
through the freaking nose.
to Realtor, and they just, and anyways. And then if we have something wrong on the listing, we'll get sued for it, even though the Zillow, like you were just talking about, Zillow can have the wrong stuff on the listing, but we're liable for it.
They'll shut us down. Can you imagine? They will put us out of business. If they kick us off the MLS, right? If we violate it and we get kicked off the MLS, right? I mean, we're out of business, right? Mm-hmm. But we're the ones that make it all happen. We're the ones that made them. Look, let me tell you something. So that segues me into the next part. And so we'll just talk about this for a minute because. So
you're fired up. Let's do
this. One day, I'm looking at our MLS, and I'm like, this is like ridiculous. My clients are calling me up saying, Todd, Zillow sent me this listing last night while you were asleep. I'm sorry. Yes, I sleep. While you were sleeping, Zillow sent me this. Why didn't you send me this? Why didn't you send? I'm like, oh, well, our MLS actually, sometimes you get things from other sources quicker than what our MLS kicks it out to. I mean, sometimes it's already under contract when it comes through, right? I'm like, this is crap. So I'm fired up. So I call up the MLS and I said, I want to see the financials. Like, who owns you guys, by the way? And they're like, oh, we're owned by the local boards. I'm like, well, that's perfect because I'm a member of the local board and these are nonprofits and I'm a contributing member and I want to see the financials. They said, well, call your board. Go have a look. The board told me absolutely not. I was not entitled. I was like doing all the calculations. I'm adding up all the fees. I'm adding up like how horrible the site is. Like, why is this thing so archaic? They actually got really upset with me.
Did you get the numbers?
No.
They refused. I might have to include them too on my call tomorrow. While we're at it.
Oh,
man.
Wow.
You think you guys are pissed off at NAR, the public.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, these systems we have to run by, right? The systems that you guys aren't happy with, we don't have a choice. Mm-hmm. And my email is going to be blowing up tomorrow. All my buddies are going to be like, man, you are crazy. You're saying all this stuff about the MLS.
I'm going to start with a new comment here. Todd, a few days back in a stream, did I hear you correct that you thought housing prices might drop 3 to 5% over the next decade? Inflation outpaces that normally, making that sound optimistic, if so.
Yeah. The problem that inflation outpaces it, but wage growth doesn't. And that's the big issue that we have in the country. But the question here is, I believe that we're going to see another 3 to 5% in the next 12 to 18 months. I don't think it's going to be a decade. I think prices are coming down. You just heard Kentucky, Idaho, Maryland. Look, you know, if we're talking straight, I mean, prices are not what they were 2 years ago, despite what you're hearing in mainstream media.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What do you
I
guys
mean,
think?
Mainstream media is typically national too, and real estate is local. So what's happening here might not be happening there.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think we, in the next couple years, you know, it's a slow and steady decrease. Last year, we saw like a 15% decrease in the median sales price year over year, or from the peak to the low. And then we had the seasonality pick up, and now we're headed back down low. So I think it's going to be a long term. I mean, the 2007 crash didn't bottom out until 2011. So, you know, we're talking about 4 years. And again, housing prices don't jump up and down because people can't just sell them like stocks. And so I think we're going to see more than 5%, at least here in the greater Boise area. But nationwide, even, I think we're going to see some declines beyond 5% in the next decade.
Yeah,
We're fairly we're insulated here, being in the middle of the country. The wild swings that the coasts have, we don't see. So I think worst case scenario, houses will appreciate more slowly. But I we've already had the drop. Will it continue? Probably, but it will not be as dramatic as the coastal areas.
Yeah.
The big drop, and when we look at, you know, what happened back in, you know, 08, I mean, a 20% is a devastation to the market, right? I mean, so when you think about, we didn't even have, I mean, depending on what market you were in, it was anywhere from like 13 to 23% price reductions in the financial collapse. What people are thinking about when they see the 50, 60% price reductions, this is distressed real estate. We just so happen to have hundreds of thousands of distressed real estate in everybody's state. And, you know, so that was what we noticed the most. And people just stopped paying their mortgages, not because they lost their job in a lot of cases, but their house was worth, you know, $100,000 less. So think about this. If you had a $500,000 house back in, you know, 08 or 07, right? That was a big number. I mean, you look at it now when we had 20% increases year over year, but think about $500,000. A 20% reduction meant that house was worth $400,000, right? So that's huge, right? So now you're looking at your neighbor is selling their house for $400,000 and you paid $500,000. How are you ever going to sell your house and move? So people just stop paying it. They stop paying their mortgage and live there until they could get evicted. And in some cases, I have a friend of mine that lived in his house for 10 years and didn't make one payment. And the bank was paying his taxes and insurance because they had to. And dude, I'm telling you guys, this is a 22,000 square foot house. And then they paid him like 50 grand to finally leave after 10 years.
Wow.
He was like, man, I'm rich because of this.
Right.
You know, I mean, I didn't pay a multi-million-dollar mortgage payment for 10 years, and then I got a nice $50,000 check to leave.
Wow.
You know, Todd, it's funny you bring that up. I had a conversation with a gal. She moved into an area, didn't like it, and she literally told me, she said, if my neighbors start foreclosing on their houses, then I will too. But until then time, I'm just going to keep plugging along and staying with it. And it's just the herd mentality, right? If all of a sudden all these people start letting their houses go, well, then it just starts trickling and getting bigger and bigger. So.
We have a question here for Neal.
And I wrote down some questions too.
As
These are the good ones. This is what everybody's waiting for.
Okay, cool. I'm ready for it.
This is where our guests are like, oh no.
We'll get to this
I've
one
seen these
first.
shows before.
Neal, as a qualified, motivated, and prudent buyer, why does your seller want, this is where it gets a little confusing, want to seller of the long days on market property sell today? The reason for the sale is very important for my offer.
This was a parents that one of them passed away, the other went to assisted living, so the house is no longer needed, and they need to get it off the books.
And there was a question here for you as well, Josh. It just came in. To the guest in Idaho, do you also represent Utah?
I do not represent Utah. No, just licensed in Idaho.
Okay.
But I think Todd and Melissa have a referral over there or something, right?
Yeah, we do. We do. If you guys need quality representation, please reach out to us through our email, or you can call the office.
And guys, I hope you're enjoying our guest panel here. I mean, like I said, they're
Yeah.
great professionals. I mean, you can hear in what they're saying. I mean, look, if I was moving to Kentucky or Idaho, I mean, these guys would be my first call. And so I think, definitely you can find great agents on SachsRealty.com. I mean, we have our new referral network that is up. We have agents that are coming on every single day, and we're populating it. It's taking us a little while.
Yeah.
We're not really going to start pushing it until October.
Until
This
October.
is just a little sneak preview. It is live. It wasn't meant to be live, but we needed to pull the trigger at some point and get it out there. So that's why we did. But it is a great resource. Our website, you guys love it. You can also go and you can visit it and learn some really cool stuff. We've got some courses that are coming on. I want to ask a question here and I know we have questions, but I want to, as we're winding down tonight, I want to address some agent issues that I personally have. And I want to get your opinions on, as professionals, I want to get your opinions on what is happening in the marketplace, because I think a lot of agents are doing their clients a disservice. And I say that, certainly not to be disparaging on any one agent, but I want to give you guys just a scenario. You take a listing that hits the market, and it's brand new listing, and we know the inventory's down. And let's say the house hits the market and it's a $500,000 listing. And, the agent wants to do their buyer, maybe, wants to get in there and really lock that property down for their buyer. So they go in there without even knowing whether they need to or not, because we have all kinds of tools called escalation clauses that we can use to protect our buyer's interest. We don't have to just give the money away, right? And we get a buyer to go in there and give a 20% over asking price, give $100,000, let's just say $500,000 house, and the house is scheduled to go on open house, and it's a hot listing in a great area, and all of a sudden the agent convinces their buyer to put in a price of $100,000 over list price, a $500,000 house, and waive all the contingencies, and then all of a sudden the buyer gets cold feet and wants to back out. We're seeing this. We're seeing this. You guys seeing this?
Yeah, this just happened to me. I wasn't representing the buyer; I was representing the seller. But the buyer just got cold feet and wanted to back out, wanted to pull out. Unfortunately, they had to give up all their earnest money. But we are seeing buyers. They get all excited, they get emotional, they make the offer, and then all of a sudden reality sets in. They see the payment, and they're like, and they try to get out.
Yeah.
Do you, in this situation with you, Josh, do you blame the buyer or do you blame the agent?
I would say it's probably a mix of both, right? I'd say it's a mix of the agent not properly educating the client, and then the client, not. The client still has to do some of their own research, right? And that's why you offer courses. There's courses everywhere for buyers to really be educated and ask the right questions, and not just choose their best friend who just got the real estate license to be their agent. Like, there are resources to make sure you're asking the right questions, to having the right agent represent you, so that the agent is doing the right thing too. So
You hit the nail on the head, man. I mean, it's so true. I think, and this is one of the reasons why our YouTube channels are so important, because people don't realize that they need good representation, and they just hire their best friend because they look at it as, and this is a big thing with the National Association of Realtors, these lawsuits that are coming out, the DOJ, is that a lot of these buyers think that their agent's free to them. Right? They don't, if they knew how much their agent was being compensated, they may think differently about who they would hire. And I think that's a big thing. We know as a, look, and this is a big thing with me too, because when we look at it and say, things aren't broken or whatever, I mean, when you look at it, I mean, at what point is a buyer's agent? Do you have to read the market and use the tools that you have to back they're being overzealous, their exuberance. How do you tame their exuberance? I mean, as a professional in this industry, and I think that's the big problem that I have with a lot of what we've seen happen, is that, and Scott said it last week, it was kind of cracked me up, but it's true. We get commission breath, right?
I know.
It's like, you want the commission check, but at the same point in time, you forget at the end of the day, man, that these people their lives can be wrecked if they make, irrational decisions. And here in Maryland, there is no 3-day rescission law. I mean, like if you sign a home improvement contract here in Maryland, they have 72 hours to rescind. They could have a buyer's remorse period. Real estate's not like that. Now, we do have other outs where they can get out because of HOA documents or things like that. I'm sure you guys have similar, outs for buyers at that point. But it's just interesting. And that just brings me to the point of, do you think there needs to be, and Neal, we'll start with you. I mean, do you think, you have been in the business, I got both you beat, but, as far as time in the industry, but do you think that there needs to be a revamping of the way things are today?
Well, yes, in some way. I think it was kind of a big realization when I figured out that I don't sell houses. When you run into those buyers that say, I'll use whatever agent finds me the house or whatever. I don't sell houses. I don't own any houses that are for sale. I'm not buying a house. I am providing a service to someone and helping them. And so if I am not looking out for their best interests, I'm literally not doing my job. And if I'm not calling the list agent when we're about to put in an offer and we end up going sky high, that's on me. That is, I did not do my job. I think that a buyer paying a buyer's agent is not a bad idea. That would help us think, well, I'm just going to get Scott that just graduated from real estate school. He's been my buddy, so I'm going to give him some business. Well, Scott doesn't know what he's doing yet. Let him get his feet under him so that he can represent you properly when it's time.
Or Scott could be on a team.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right.
Well,
he could be on a team and he could learn from the team leader and the structure of the team. I think that's a big thing too. My problem is I think the leadership, I think it's a problem from the head down. Yeah. And, I think that, and Josh, I can't wait to hear your answer. And Neal, you're going to be a broker and you're going to find out, man. You take all the liability of these agents, right? Yeah. And, it is a liability, but Josh, maybe you could talk about it. Do you think there needs to be some type of change? And Neal, by the way, said yes.
Yeah. No, I think so. You think about it, you have to get your real estate license. You got, at least in Idaho, you take a couple courses, maybe 2 weeks long, and then you take a couple tests, and all of a sudden you have a real estate license. But to cut hair, in order to cut hair, you have to do 900 hours of apprenticeship, right? To be a CPA, you have to do at least 150 credit hours in order to be a CPA. And then to be like an appraiser, you have to do 3,000 hours of just of appraising experience as an apprentice. Yet being a real estate agent, right? You don't need that, but I think we need that. I think we need some kind of system where you have to have this, some kind of coaching, some kind of shadowing for so many hours, for so many, for such a time frame, before you go and you sign somebody up for a $500,000 purchase, before you sign somebody up for a $300,000 purchase that could wreck their life if they do it the wrong way. So, I mean, that's just kind of my opinion behind it. I think there needs to be more than just a couple weeks of classes.
Yeah, that's smart. I started on a team, and I'm grateful I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, look, you guys have taken broker education. So, I mean, Neal, you're waiting for your paperwork to go through. I mean, you took your broker course. And, I think everybody should take, I mean, one of the things I think just like Josh said, apprenticeship, I mean, I think everybody should have to take their become an associate broker after they've been in the business 3 or 5 years. They have to take that, that further education, because I got news for you. The test is a lot harder, and, what you learn is it's a lot more in depth. You actually learn things that you use every day. Let's take a couple more, and we'll let our great guest call it a night. This is a good show, man. You guys are really, really awesome. I hope everybody is enjoying it. Mm-hmm. And you can let us know by smashing that thumbs up. You let everybody know that you enjoy the show. Guys, if you haven't already subscribed to Sachs Realty, you could do that now and hit the alert bell. We always appreciate that. And when you share us with your friends, this is the only way, by the way, when you do things like that. And it's just kind of, like we're trying to get the right information out into your hands. But the way that you can help us get this information out to more people is by hitting the like, because that tells the algorithms to push it out to more people. By sharing it with your family and your friends, that tells the algorithm that this is valuable information, that you believe it's valuable. If I share it, they think, it's nothing, right? But when you share it, so that's why, guys, we need to spread the word about the housing market, because you're not going to get this information in mainstream media. I promise you, you're not getting it. That's why we're so fortunate to have 500 people watching us live on, our live stream. We're grateful for you, but the best thing you can do is help us get it out, push it out.
So one more time, I wanted to go back to our poll just to check that out. So it seems to be 25% yes, 59% no, 16% maybe.
Yeah.
So we had
417 votes, yeah.
417
Great.
votes. And we did have a commenter here. I didn't read that question as a negative. I read it as someone who is renting is thinking differently than someone who is a homeowner. There are pros and cons of both. There are homeowners who are house poor and or underwater in their mortgage. You can be a renter with assets and cheap rent, avoiding that pitfall. They are thinking differently.
Guys, and it. How many of you have gone into a house, both of you have, and they've lived in a house for 20 years and they have no deck, right? They still have the same railing that was put up on the sliding glass door, that was a safety railing until they built a deck, and they couldn't afford a deck. Or you go in and they have these rooms that have no furniture in there, right? And but they wanted to have that house. And I have a friend of mine that is in finances and financial advisor, and he said one of the saddest things is people putting every penny they have into the house and not doing any other type of investing. And then when they get to the point in their life where they need money, the only way they can get it out of their house is to do a reverse mortgage, or to move and sell their house and go somewhere else to be able to get that equity out of their house. So you live in your house for 30, 40 years. How do you get your equity out of it? If you live within your means, you can have extra money to do other types of investment that will help you to afford your older years in life, right?
Mm-hmm.
We had a super cash,
I think that
as
just
you call it.
slipped by. Oh, here it is right here.
There we go.
Todd, how do you vet your agents in your program?
And Mr. Angry?
Mr. Angry. Don't be angry.
Come on, man. You're not angry. So our agents in our program have to have a very high customer score, 4.6 or better in reviews, number one. They have to be full-time in the business as well. And, they have to be professionals. They have to be transacting business. We like to see agents with at least 6 transactions a year under their belt. And we like to see that they've done quite a few transactions in the last 6 months.
Yes.
Because the market has changed. So that's how it's not an easy thing.
No, it's not.
It's an interview process, and which is why we don't have every city full.
That's right.
We are very, one of the things, guys, that, I'll just say is, this is Sachs Realty. This is my name. This isn't some weird name like a Zillow or something like that. Like, who is Mr. Zillow, right? So, I mean, we are very concerned, even with our customer satisfaction here at our brokerage. As long as I'm involved, I want to be able to think that we're providing a good value for our listeners, our audience, our customers, our clients. So it's a great question, but yes. And you can tell by our professionals right here, right now.
Yep.
These guys are, they're definitely pros.
They are pros. And your reviews showed it, guys, too. So
Yeah.
that's
Well, anyway, we'll wrap it up, guys. Parting thoughts.
Yeah, I would just say if you're thinking about trying to attain the American dream of buying a house, just really think of hook up with somebody who knows the market and can really educate you, because my market is completely different than Kentucky, completely different than Massachusetts, from New York. So just you need to team up with somebody and really just I listen to this YouTube channel, Sachs Realty. I mean, even though I have my own channel, I listen to some of his stuff and just try to break away from mainstream media and listen to what people who are actually transacting and not just cheering you on. If somebody's just cheering you on and they're getting paid, you should be really just asking yourself, should I be listening to them because they're just lining their pockets? So.
Yeah. Real estate is local. Find someone who is an expert in your local market, and then take their advice too. You do get people every now and then working with an agent, and they want to go left every time the agent says right. There is a reason they're telling you what to do, and normally they'll explain that reason too. So work with your agent. Take their advice. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. All right, guys. Melissa, any parting thoughts?
Yeah, good. Another amazing night, you guys, all of you. So many comments and questions. Thank you so much for your feedback. Thank you, Josh, and thank you, Neal. Really, really great. You guys, I mean, you're naturals at this. Can definitely tell. And thank you for your time.
So thanks for having us.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys. Thanks so much. And, man, spending your Tuesday night with us. And if you guys are listening and there's something that you want to hear or something that you want us to cover, go ahead and comment that in. And the best way to do that really isn't in the chat, because when the live stream is over, we really rely on the comments. So if you leave a comment, what do you want to hear? What do you want us to cover? Who do you want to hear? I mean, if you have a guest that you'd like to see on the show. But anyway, check out our guest YouTube channels. Subscribe to them. If you need agents in their town, they'd love to hear from you guys. We appreciate you. Until next week. See you soon.
See you soon.